Meet Claude. Before you start prompting, tweaking, or optimizing, there's something more important to get right: expectations. Claude is not a faster version of other AI tools. It doesn't behave the same way, and it doesn't reward the same habits. Once you understand how Claude thinks, everything else becomes easier. This lesson is about building the right mental model. First impressions matter. Many people try Claude after using other tools and feel something is off. The answers may seem cautious. The creativity may feel restrained. Sometimes Claude asks clarifying questions instead of jumping in. This isn't a limitation, it's a signal. Claude is optimized for a different kind of work. How Claude approaches problems. Claude is designed to reason carefully before responding. Instead of guessing what you want, it tries to understand intent, consider implications, avoid oversimplified conclusions. This makes Claude especially strong at tasks where clarity, nuance, and structure matter more than speed. Where Claude excels. Claude shines when the task involves thinking, not just generating. It performs especially well when you need to. Work through complex ideas. Analyze long or detailed material. Refine writing or arguments. Explore sensitive or ambiguous topics. In these situations, Claude's careful approach becomes a real advantage. Where Claude struggles. That same careful design can feel limiting in other contexts. Claude may struggle when the task goal is vague. The prompt relies on guesswork. You ask for something creative without boundaries. Speed matters more than depth. When this happens, Claude is waiting for clearer direction. Which request is most likely to produce a weak or frustrating response from Claude? Summarize this 40-page report and highlight the key trade-offs. Review this argument and point out logical gaps. Help me think through a sensitive workplace decision. Write something creative about anything you want. A different kind of creativity. Claude can be creative, but not in a chaotic way. Its creativity tends to be thoughtful rather than flashy, grounded rather than wild, guided by structure and intent. If you give Claude a clear frame, it explores deeply inside it. If you give it nothing, it plays it safe. Claude. Compared to other AI tools. If you've used tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, or DeepSeek, Claude may feel familiar at first. But the differences show up quickly once tasks become more complex. These models aren't better or worse overall. They're optimized for different kinds of thinking and different working styles. Claude and ChatGPT. Different priorities. ChatGPT is optimized for speed, flexibility, and conversational flow. It often jumps into a task quickly, even when the goal is loosely defined. Claude takes a more deliberate approach. It prefers clarity before action and tends to reason through implications before producing an answer. In practice, ChatGPT feels energetic and improvisational. Claude feels reflective and careful. ChatGPT often excels at rapid ideation and quick drafts. Claude stands out when structure, nuance, and correctness matter more than speed. Claude and Gemini. Focus versus breadth. Gemini is designed to work across a wide range of tasks and environments. It adapts quickly and often shines when tasks involve integrations, tools, or fast synthesis. Claude focuses more narrowly on reasoning quality and language consistency. It's especially strong at maintaining coherence across long conversations or large documents. In practice, Gemini feels broad and adaptive. Claude feels focused and steady. Claude is often the better choice when sustained attention and depth are required. Claude and DeepSeek. Caution versus speed. DeepSeek is optimized for efficiency and rapid problem-solving. It tends to move quickly from prompt to output, often producing confident answers even when instructions are minimal. Claude takes a more cautious path. It prioritizes understanding the full context before responding and is more likely to slow down, clarify, or hedge when information is incomplete. In practice, DeepSeek feels fast, direct, and assertive. Claude feels careful, reflective, and deliberate. DeepSeek can be useful for rapid technical exploration. Claude is better suited for tasks where nuance, correctness, and long-term consistency matter. How the differences show up in real work. When tasks are simple, the differences between models can feel minor. As complexity increases, patterns emerge. Claude asks clarifying questions more often. Claude avoids guessing. Claude maintains tone and logic over long responses. This can feel slower at first, but it often reduces rewrites, corrections, and misunderstandings later. It's about fit, not rankings. There's no single best AI model for every situation. Claude works best when the problem is layered or ambiguous. You care about reasoning and explanation over speed. Consistency across longer work matters. Other tools may feel faster or more playful. Claude rewards patience, clarity, and intent, especially in serious or high-stakes work. You're working on a long document where clarity, consistency, and careful reasoning matter more than speed. Which tool fits best? Gemini, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Claude is. A subtle shift in how you work. Working with Claude requires a small mindset shift. Instead of asking, "Can you do this for me?" you'll get better results asking, "Here's what I'm trying to solve. Let's think it through." Claude responds best when treated as a collaborator. Looking ahead. Now that you understand how Claude approaches problems, the next step is learning how to work with that behavior over time. In the next lesson, you'll explore projects, a way to keep context, goals, and direction consistent across longer work. This is where Claude starts to feel less like a chat box and more like a workspace. Working with projects. Some problems aren't solved in one sitting. They come back. They change. New details appear. Decisions made earlier affect what happens next. When work stretches over time, remembering context becomes part of the problem. Let's start with a situation like that. Scenario: planning a renovation. Imagine you're planning a home renovation. You want to estimate a rough budget, think through the order of work, compare materials, revisit decisions as new constraints appear. You open Claude and start asking questions. What's most likely to happen if you plan a multi-step renovation entirely in separate, one-off chats? The conversation becomes faster over time. The answers become incorrect. You keep re-explaining context and correcting earlier assumptions. Claude refuses to help. Feeling the friction. You ask about flooring, then about plumbing and lighting. Each answer is helpful on its own, but none of them remember the bigger picture you're building. Earlier constraints fade unless you restate them. The problem isn't Claude's reasoning, it's the lack of a stable frame, a different approach. Now, imagine approaching the same renovation inside a project. Instead of isolated questions, Claude sees the overall goal, previous decisions, constraints you've already discussed. You're no longer starting over, you're continuing. Inside a project, Claude doesn't just answer your latest message. It reasons in relation to what came before. Budget estimates adjust instead of resetting. Suggestions respect earlier choices. Trade-offs remain consistent. The work starts to feel cumulative instead of fragmented, starting with a clear frame. Inside your renovation project, you begin by describing the situation once, not perfectly, just clearly. You outline the size of the apartment, your rough budget range, the rooms involved. What matters most: cost, speed, quality, or style. This isn't a prompt you'll repeat. It becomes the foundation everything else builds on. Building step by step. Next, you ask Claude to help break the renovation into phases. You talk through what should happen first, which steps depend on others, where decisions can wait. Later, when you ask about flooring or lighting, Claude already understands where those choices fit in the overall plan. You're no longer asking isolated questions. You're extending the same line of thinking, revising without resetting. A week later, you get new contractor quotes. The budget changes. Instead of explaining everything again, you simply update the situation. Which costs increased, which parts are flexible. Claude adjusts previous recommendations instead of replacing them. Trade-offs shift, but the logic stays intact. This is where projects quietly save the most effort. Exploring alternatives. You're not always sure which option is best. Inside the project, you can ask, what if we delay this step? What changes if we choose cheaper materials here? Which decision has the biggest impact on the budget? Claude answers with awareness of everything you've already discussed, not just the latest question. What makes this renovation planning easier inside a project? Earlier decisions influence later recommendations. You don't need to ask follow-up questions. The interface looks different. Claude gives longer answers. A project is not a prompt. A project isn't a single instruction you get right once. It's a living context. Assumptions can change, priorities can shift, and details can be added gradually. Claude adapts as the project evolves, without losing track of what came before. A practical way to use projects. A simple pattern works well. 1. Set the direction. 2. Explore options. 3. Revisit decisions. 4. Adjust constraints. 5. Refine the plan. You don't need perfect prompts, just continuity. Projects aren't the same everywhere. You may have seen a similar idea called projects in other tools, like ChatGPT. While the name is the same, the experience is different. In Claude, a project acts as a shared thinking space. Claude actively reasons with the accumulated context. Earlier decisions shape later suggestions without constant reminders. The difference shows up over time. Claude projects emphasize continuity and coherence. ChatGPT projects emphasize access and organization. Neither is better in general, but Claude's approach is especially helpful when decisions build on each other. Where Claude's projects shine. Claude's projects feel strongest when the work itself is evolving. They're especially useful for planning that requires revisiting assumptions, long-form writing with a consistent direction, learning complex topics over time, comparing options and trade-offs repeatedly. In these cases, continuity isn't just convenient. It actively improves the quality of thinking. Which situation benefits most from being handled inside a project? Asking for a definition. Generating a single checklist. Planning and revising a renovation over time. Writing one short email. How to start a project. In Claude, from the Projects section in the interface, you can create a new project and begin working inside it. Every conversation within that project shares the same context and purpose. There's nothing special to configure. What matters most is choosing a clear goal at the start. Projects work best when everything inside them points in the same direction. If the goal changes completely, new topic, new outcome, new problem, starting a new project is usually cleaner than forcing everything into one space. Clarity strengthens continuity. In the next lesson, you'll go one step further by working with artifacts, a powerful feature that lets you build, revise, and refine something tangible. That's where your creativity starts to take real shape. See you there. Build, don't just ask. There's a point where talking through an idea becomes inefficient. You understand what you want, and you may even know how it should work. What's missing is something you can see, test, and refine. This lesson is about crossing that line, from explanation to execution with Claude's Artifacts feature. A familiar loop. Imagine asking Claude to design a simple registration form. Without artifacts, the process looks like this. 1. Claude generates HTML and CSS. 2. You copy it into an editor. Open a browser. Tweak spacing or colors. repeat. The idea is sound, but the workflow is fragmented. What's the main problem in this workflow? You keep switching tools to see results. The explanation isn't detailed enough. Claude doesn't generate good code. The task is too complex. What artifacts change? Artifacts remove that friction. An artifact is a dedicated interactive output that Claude displays in a separate visualization window inside the interface. Instead of imagining results, you see them immediately. Rendered UI-formatted documents, live previews of code. Claude decides automatically when an artifact is needed, or you can ask for one explicitly. How artifacts appear in Claude. When Claude creates an artifact, it opens in a side panel next to the conversation. This panel has two main viewing modes. Preview shows how the result looks or behaves. Code shows the underlying source, when applicable. You can switch between them instantly. How to access artifacts. Artifacts are available directly in Claude's interface. To enable or check them, 1. Open your profile settings. 2. Find the Capabilities section. 3. Toggle the features on. Once enabled, Claude will automatically open artifacts when visualization is helpful. They're supported across most subscription plans. You can also access artifacts, yours and pre-made, from a separate tab on the left. You may as well build a new artifact right from here by clicking New Artifact. Then, you pick the category and describe what you want. Scenario: Promo website. Suppose you want to build a website to promote your catering services. Let's see how Claude can help with prototyping real quick. Great job! Here's what Claude created. What would be your next step with this website? Add the details and personalization in the text. Make a few edits in the color palette. Keep it as it is and show the audience. Editing without breaking everything. Artifacts are designed for targeted edits. You can highlight a specific section, text, code, or layout, and ask Claude to modify only that part. This avoids rewriting entire documents, breaking working sections, wasting usage limits. It also keeps iteration focused. Iteration is the real power. Artifacts shine when ideas evolve. You can experiment with layouts, test styles, explore alternatives, compare versions. What you can build with artifacts. Artifacts support several powerful output types, including interactive web elements, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, documents and formatted text, SVG graphics and diagrams, dashboards and data visualizations. These aren't separate tools. They're different ways the same artifact system renders results. The mindset shift. Artifacts change the question you ask Claude. Instead of, "Can you explain this?" you ask, "Can you build this so I can see it?" That shift, from abstract discussion to concrete experimentation, is the real value of artifacts. Wrapping up, you now know how to recognize when an artifact is needed, access and manage artifacts in Claude, iterate safely and precisely, and move from ideas to usable outputs. Artifacts turn Claude into more than a conversational partner. They make it a workspace for building. Next, you'll learn how to guide Claude's reasoning and creativity more deliberately with different tool-specific prompting techniques. Stay tuned. Complex webs of knowledge. To get the best possible outcome from Claude, it's important to encourage it to connect ideas across different domains and generate more holistic, multifaceted responses. Today, you will learn how to master interconnected reasoning, guiding Claude to think across disciplines and discover unexpected relationships between concepts. Cross-domain analysis. Cross-domain analysis involves comparing how a single issue or innovation impacts different fields. This technique allows Claude to analyze the effects of an idea across multiple areas, revealing connections that may not be immediately obvious. Excellent. This prompt encourages Claude to think across domains and explore how the same innovation might produce different results in each. Let's move on. Systems thinking approach. Systems thinking focuses on how different components within a system interact and influence each other. Consider a company as a system. Product development, marketing, and customer support all interact. A change in one area, like accelerating product releases, can affect support workload and marketing timelines. Systems thinking helps reveal these interdependencies. Great! By asking Claude to analyze interactions within a system, you encourage a more comprehensive understanding of how different parts influence each other. Identifying causal relationships. Causal relationships explore how changes in one area can cause effects in another. By focusing on cause and effect dynamics, you encourage Claude to uncover deeper insights about how different factors influence each other. For example, how does a pricing change in a subscription service affect customer retention, usage patterns, and revenue forecasting? Well done. By focusing on the causal relationships between a change and its broader effects, you guide Claude to develop more insightful connections. Let's move to the next technique. Exploring ripple effects. Ripple effects refer to the broader, longer-term consequences of an action or change. This technique encourages Claude to consider how an event in one area can set off a chain reaction in others. Exploring ripple effects helps Claude look beyond the immediate outcomes to consider technological changes' broader long-term consequences. Finally, let's consider second-order consequences. Considering second-order consequences. Second-order consequences refer to indirect, long-term effects that emerge as a result of an initial action. By considering these consequences, Claude can produce deeper, more nuanced responses. Excellent. Considering second-order consequences encourages Claude to go beyond immediate results, uncovering stronger effects that might not be immediately obvious. Congratulations! You've mastered the art of promoting interconnected reasoning in Claude's responses. This skill allows you to generate more comprehensive and insightful analyses, helping you tackle complex, multifaceted problems effectively. In the next lesson, you'll learn how to guide Claude through structured frameworks, to analyze problems even more deeply and consistently. Enhancing Claude's analysis. Welcome to the next lesson in your exploration of Claude. Today, we'll see how using multiple analytical frameworks helps you get more comprehensive and insightful analyses. Understanding analytical frameworks. Analytical frameworks provide structured approaches to examining complex issues. Using multiple frameworks can offer diverse perspectives.
In case you want to know what the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of using social media are, here is a quick look at that.
Excellent. This prompt covers a powerful analytical framework, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, helping structure both internal and external evaluation. Combining complementary frameworks. Selecting complementary frameworks can provide a more holistic view of a subject. This prompt combines VRIO framework, value, rarity, imitability, organization, to assess the startup's internal resources and capabilities. Porter's 5 forces, new entrants, suppliers, buyers, rivalry, substitutes, to analyze the competitive landscape. This combination helps evaluate both internal capabilities and competitive dynamics, resulting in a more balanced analysis. Applying frameworks. Sequentially. Sometimes it's beneficial to apply frameworks in a specific order to build a layered analysis. Great job! This prompt outlines a sequential analysis process. It starts with the BCG matrix to evaluate the company's current product portfolio, then uses scenario planning to explore potential future outcomes, and concludes with a TOWS, threats, opportunities, weaknesses, strengths analysis, to formulate strategies based on the insights gained from the previous steps. Practical application. Let's test what we've learned. Well done! You now know how to guide Claude through multiple analytical frameworks to produce structured, well-rounded analyses. In our next lesson, we'll explore how to stimulate Claude's creative abilities, to ignite that spark in the tool, and get interesting results. Until then, keep practicing with multiple frameworks to enhance your analytical capabilities. Claude's imaginative potential. Today, we'll explore techniques to encourage more creative and innovative responses from Claude. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to craft prompts that inspire Claude to generate original, imaginative, and unconventional ideas. Creative prompting involves using specific techniques to encourage Claude to generate more original, imaginative, and unconventional responses. Let's start with one of the most effective creativity techniques: introducing unusual scenarios. What-if questions. You can inspire Claude by introducing unusual scenarios, combining unrelated concepts, or posing what-if questions to spark out-of-the-box thinking. Excellent. This prompt sets up an unusual scenario and asks for innovative solutions, which encourages Claude to think creatively and explore unconventional possibilities. Now that you've seen how to craft a creativity-stimulating prompt, let's dive into specific techniques that can help you unlock Claude's full imaginative potential. Combining unrelated concepts. You already used one of them: unusual scenarios or what-if questions. Next, combining unrelated concepts involves mixing ideas from different fields to generate unique solutions. When you combine unrelated concepts, you create unexpected connections that lead to new ways of thinking. Think of how you can describe an everyday object in terms of something completely unrelated. This creates a new function for the object in a different context.
Imagine your smartphone as a sentient companion, a warm, responsive being with glass skin and digital veins. It breathes in data, learns your habits, and anticipates your needs through empathetic connection rather than algorithms. This living phone might physically adapt to circumstances, stretching for better viewing, curling around your wrist when needed, and generating warmth when you're cold. It could heal minor scratches, regulate its own energy needs, and express emotions through subtle color changes and vibrations. Most significantly, it might prioritize your well being over task efficiency, suggesting breaks during extended uses or connecting you with loved ones when sensing your loneliness.
Reversing assumptions. Great. By combining a smartphone with the concept of a sentient being, you push Claude to think of new ways this object could function, leading to innovative ideas. Reversing assumptions. This technique is similar to the previous one. You flip conventional ideas or expectations. Which benefits can be achieved by using the reversing assumptions technique with Claude? It can reveal hidden opportunities or overlooked alternatives. It encourages Claude to explore paths that contradict established norms. It helps discover novel solutions by challenging conventional thinking. It simplifies complex problems by reducing variables. Now that you understand how reversing assumptions works, let's explore how metaphorical thinking can encourage abstract creativity. Encouraging metaphorical thinking. By comparing an idea to something seemingly unrelated, you help Claude explore new connections and generate unique responses.
As a flowing system, the car shifts from a rigid machine to a continuous experience. Instead of fixed routines and mechanical control, movement becomes adaptive and responsive, adjusting speed, direction, and form based on conditions. Navigation relies on real-time sensing rather than predefined paths. Passengers influence the flow through a subtle input instead of a direct control. The focus moves from reaching a destination efficiently to maintaining balance, continuity, and momentum throughout the journey. This metaphor reframes transportation as an adaptive process rather than a fixed mechanism.
Great work! By comparing a car to a flowing river, Claude can explore how this metaphor shifts the function of the object, sparking abstract creative responses. Imposing arbitrary constraints. By imposing arbitrary constraints, like limiting resources or time, you force Claude to think creatively within strict boundaries. This can lead to more inventive solutions, as constraints often inspire out-of-the-box problem-solving. Excellent! By limiting the materials and time, you've pushed Claude to think creatively, finding unique solutions under these constraints. Seeking multiple perspectives. Encouraging Claude to consider ideas from various viewpoints opens up a broader range of responses. When you ask for perspectives from different fields, experiences, or backgrounds, you push Claude to come up with well-rounded creative solutions. Last task. Which creativity techniques work best for generating innovative product ideas? Imposing arbitrary constraints, like limited materials or time. Combining unrelated concepts such as smartphone and living being. Seeking multiple perspectives from different fields. Using only technical language and specifications. Amazing job! You've learned multiple techniques to encourage more creative, original responses from Claude, from unusual scenarios to constraints and perspective shifts. These approaches help move beyond obvious ideas and explore unexpected possibilities. That's it for Unit 2. In our next lesson, we'll explore techniques for communicating with the tool across various use cases and scenarios in which Claude performs best. Get ready to connect the dots in new and insightful ways. Writing and editing with Claude. You've written something important. A proposal, a report, an explanation that matters. The ideas are there, but something feels off. This is where most writing actually happens. Not in the first draft, but in the work that comes after. And this is where Claude makes a difference. The difference shows up in revision. Why do you think it's difficult to revise your own draft? You lack the technical skill to improve it. You don't remember what you were trying to say. You're too close to the work to see where it's unclear, and Team, some important changes are coming up. Starting next month, Sarah's moving into the product lead role, which means her current responsibilities will shift to Marcus and Jen. We're also bringing on 2 new hires to support the launch, and they'll report directly to me for now. The project timeline isn't changing, but the way we're structuring work will be different. Specifically, tasks will be more clearly divided, and communication channels will be streamlined. Let me know if you have questions. Notice what changed. The opening is more direct. Each point has its own paragraph. The timeline mentions now connects to what it means for the team. Notice what didn't change. Your tone, your information, your voice. It still sounds like you wrote it. Adjusting tone for different audiences. Sometimes the structure is fine, but the tone doesn't suit the audience. You've written a project update for your manager. It's clear and complete, but it feels too informal for senior leadership. You need the same facts presented more formally, but without sounding stiff or mechanical. After seeing Claude's answer, what's the most important difference between adjusting tone and rewriting content? Tone adjustment is faster than rewriting content, and it works well for short documents. Tone adjustment changes how something is said, not what is said. Maintaining coherence in long documents. While short writing is forgiving, long documents aren't. But with Claude as your proofreader, you shouldn't worry. Imagine you're finalizing a 20-page research report. Section 4 was written 2 weeks ago. Section 9 was finished yesterday. The problem? This could result in some inconsistencies. For example, some of those inconsistencies are: Section 4 calls the framework Stakeholder Engagement Model. Section 9 calls it Participant Involvement Framework. Same concept, different terms. The conclusion references 3 core principles, but you actually outlined 4 in Section 6. These aren't obvious when you're editing piece by piece. but they weaken the document when someone reads it start to finish. Why do you think this kind of review is difficult to do manually? You lose track of earlier sections while focusing on later ones. Documents are too long to read multiple times. It requires specialized knowledge about document structure. Writing that requires care. Another important thing, some messages require more than clarity. They require care. You're writing an email to inform your team that a project they've worked on for months is being postponed indefinitely due to budget cuts. You need to be honest about what's happening, but you don't want it to sound cold or dismissive. The information is there, but something feels off. Nothing we can do sounds dismissive. Thanks for your work feels like an afterthought. The message delivers bad news without acknowledging how difficult it actually is. Looking at that draft, what's the main problem with how the difficult news is delivered? It's too long and doesn't explain why the decision was made because of unnecessary details. It acknowledges the situation, but doesn't really validate how people might feel. This is where Claude's careful nature really shines. It considers how language lands, not just what it says. As a result, it can help to address difficult topics without oversimplifying them. See the difference? The revised version doesn't hide behind corporate language or rush past the impact. It names the difficulty directly and offers concrete next steps, not vague reassurances. Claude didn't soften the news or add false optimism. It made the message clearer and more honest. What you've learned. In this lesson, you've seen how Claude handles a draft. Carefully, without rushing, and really getting what you meant to say. It makes your ideas clearer and your voice stronger. When writing needs to be accurate and appropriate, Claude's deliberate approach is exactly what's right for the task. Next, you'll see how Claude can help you in organizing complex information into something that makes sense. See you in the next lesson. Understanding, research, and synthesis. You're trying to figure something out? You've found articles, advice, and different opinions. Now you're thinking, what do I do with all this? Let's see how Claude can help. Scenario: conflicting health advice. You've been feeling tired lately. You want to understand why and what to do about it. So you search online. You find an article saying you need more sleep. Another saying it's probably your diet. A third claiming it's lack of exercise. One more suggesting it might be stress. Everyone sounds convincing, but no one agrees. What's the actual problem here? The information doesn't go beyond the basics. You have information but can't see what actually applies to you. The sources are unreliable, so you need to find more information. You could spend hours rereading everything, taking notes, trying to remember what each source said. Or you could try something different. a faster way to make sense of it all without wasting your mental energy. You copy the first article into Claude. Instead of asking for a summary, you ask, "What's the main point this article is making about fatigue?" Claude responds, "This article argues that chronic fatigue often stems from sleep debt, not just sleeping too little one night, but consistently getting less sleep than your body needs over weeks or months. The key idea: your body keeps a sleep account that compounds over time." That's not what the article said word for word. It's what the article meant. Now you paste two more sources, the diet article and the one about exercise. You ask, how do these three sources connect? Claude responds, all three identify fatigue as a symptom of resource depletion. Sleep article, depleted recovery time. Diet article, depleted nutrients. Exercise article, depleted cardiovascular capacity. The connecting thread, your body is running low on something it needs to function. See how this works? Instead of three separate summaries, Claude showed you the pattern linking them. What's the best thing about this approach instead of reading three summaries separately? It tells you which source is most important. It's faster, and it removes contradictions. It shows you how the pieces fit together.
The correct answer is that synthesis finds relationships. Cloud shows you the shared principles across different perspectives, something you probably wouldn't see reading each piece alone.
When you don't understand something, sometimes you encounter a term you don't fully understand. For example, the stress article keeps mentioning cortisol dysregulation. You know cortisol is a stress hormone, but what does dysregulation really mean?
Cortisol dysregulation means your body's stress response system isn't working as it should, either producing too much cortisol at the wrong time or not enough when you need it. An obvious example would be waking up exhausted despite 8 hours of sleep. A subtle example would be getting a second wind of energy at 10 p.m. when you're trying to sleep.
Now you understand it through contrasts, what it looks like in different situations. This is how Claude teaches, by building understanding through varied examples. Making sense of long documents. Sometimes the challenge isn't multiple sources. It's one very long source. Imagine your friend sends a 40-page report on workplace wellness programs. You need to understand what it recommends, but you don't have time to read all of it. You upload it to Claude and ask, what are the most important recommendations this report makes? Claude responds, 1. Wellness programs fail when they're optional add-ons. The report argues they should be integrated into normal work structure, not separate wellness activities. 2. Mental health support needs to be proactive, not reactive. Waiting for people to ask for help means they've already been struggling too long. 3. Leadership participation matters more than program budget. Programs with engaged leadership and modest budgets outperform expensive programs with disengaged leadership. In this response, Claude went beyond the executive summary and picked out the key ideas from the entire report. What makes this more useful than reading the executive summary? It removes technical language, which makes it shorter. It extracts what actually matters based on your question. It highlights the most recent information. You follow up. What trade-offs does this report acknowledge, and what does it not address? Claude responds, acknowledged, Time investment versus immediate productivity. Not addressed. How to implement this in remote or hybrid teams. The entire report assumes in-person work. That's analysis, seeing what's there and what's missing. Why do you think noticing missing considerations is valuable? It helps you find errors in the document. It reveals assumptions the author made without stating them. It shows which sections were written carelessly. Finding unexpected connections. The hardest kind of synthesis happens when sources don't obviously relate. Think back to the fatigue problem. You've got your health articles, but you also remember reading something about productivity systems and decision fatigue. Could these ideas be connected?
Amazing. You're on the right track with your approach.
As you could see from the answer, Claude went beyond summarizing and highlighted the link between the ideas in your situation. This is synthesis, seeing patterns that only emerge when you consider multiple ideas simultaneously. What you just learned. In this lesson, you've learned to use Claude for sense-making. Its extended context and careful reasoning become essential when you have information but need understanding. In a nutshell, Claude can find patterns across sources, explain through teaching, identify what's present and what's missing, and connect ideas that don't naturally relate. With this in mind, you'll next see how Claude assists in looking at things critically and strategically. Keep it up. Strategic thinking and critical review. Making decisions is not easy, especially when it's the kind where every option has pros and cons, and the right answer depends on what you're willing to give up. This is where most decisions actually get uncomfortable, and where Claude can help you. Scenario: should you take the job? You've been offered a new job. It pays 30% more and it's fully remote. You'd lose the in-person team you currently enjoy, but you'd gain more flexibility, something that matters a lot to you. Your friend says, take it, more money is always better. Your partner says, think about work-life balance. Remote can be draining. Your mentor says, small companies are risky. Stay where you have stability. Everyone is confident, and no one agrees. What makes this decision hard? The advice contradicts itself. Every option involves trade-offs, with no clear winner. You don't have enough information, and you're overthinking it. You open Claude and describe the situation. Then you ask, what am I actually trading off if I take this job? Claude responds, you're trading immediate financial improvement for relational and structural uncertainty. The 30% raise is concrete, but you're exchanging known team dynamics for unknown ones, and established processes for ambiguity. The question isn't which is better, it's which uncertainty you're more willing to navigate. That changes the frame. The problem is no longer what's the right answer, it's which trade-off fits you.
The question isn't which is better, it's which uncertainty you're more willing to navigate. Is this advice or analysis?
After that, you follow up. What am I not considering? Claude responds, you're focusing on the job itself. Pay, team, responsibilities. You haven't mentioned how remote work affects your living situation. Do you have a dedicated workspace? These logistics sound minor, but they shape daily experience more than salary does. You pause. You hadn't considered that your current apartment doesn't really have space for a proper home office. Why is "what am I not considering" useful? It finds errors in your reasoning. It tells you the right answer. It makes the decision easier. It reveals blind spots you weren't aware of. Exploring alternatives. Choosing between two options can feel hard, but sometimes the real work is realizing there might be a third option you haven't considered. You ask Claude, is there a version of this decision I'm not seeing? Claude responds, you're treating this as binary, take the new job or stay, but you haven't explored whether negotiation changes the equation. Can you negotiate remote work at your current company? The binary choice might be self-imposed. Wait, you could actually ask your company for remote work. Stress testing. Your reasoning. You're leaning towards staying at your current job and negotiating remote work, but you want to make sure you're not just avoiding change. You ask Claude, what's the strongest argument against my reasoning?
My strongest argument against staying and negotiating. You're assuming your current company will offer meaningful remote flexibility, but you haven't tested that assumption. If they say no or offer something limited, you've lost leverage with the other company. You'd be negotiating from a weaker position. The new company made an offer. That's concrete. Negotiating with your current company is speculative. You might be choosing uncertainty over certainty because uncertainty feels safer when you're familiar.
That's uncomfortable to read, but that's exactly what makes it so useful. Claude didn't attack your reasoning. It strengthened your thinking by showing you where it might be weak. Why should you deliberately seek arguments against your own reasoning? To gather more opinions. To test whether your reasoning holds up under scrutiny. To avoid making mistakes. To find the objectively correct answer. Evaluating constraints. Every decision has constraints, deadlines, resources, expectations. But sometimes we treat constraints as absolute, when they're actually flexible. You tell Claude, I need to decide within 2 weeks because that's when the offer expires. Claude responds, that's a real constraint. But is it negotiable? Have you asked if the deadline can be extended? Most offers have some flexibility if you're genuinely considering them. Treating the deadline as fixed might be creating unnecessary pressure. You assumed the deadline was final and hadn't even thought to ask. In this sense, what's the difference between a real constraint and an assumed one? Real constraints are external. Assumed constraints are internal. Real constraints matter more than assumed constraints. Real constraints are written down. Assumed constraints are verbal. Real constraints can't change. Assumed constraints haven't been tested. When there's no right answer, some decisions don't resolve into a single correct choice. They resolve into priorities. As a result, they have different answers that work for different priorities. Claude won't decide for you, but it will help you see the decision more clearly.
If you're choosing between a current job and a new job, what are you actually optimizing for in each case? You're optimizing for a relational continuity and a psychological safety. You know these people, you trust these processes. The risk is lower, but so is the upside. The other thing, taking a new job, you're optimizing for financial growth and skill expansion. More money, more response. The risk is higher, but so is the potential reward. Neither is wrong. The question is, at this point in your life, which optimization matters more to you? There is no universal answer, only the answer based on what you need right now.
Claude clarifies trade-offs, reveals blind spots, tests your reasoning, and questions your assumptions. It surfaces trade-offs. It reveals blind spots. It tests your reasoning. It questions your assumptions. So, when there's no obvious answer, that kind of thinking support matters. You've now seen Claude's core strengths: careful reasoning, thoughtful analysis, and deliberate judgment. Next, you'll look at the bigger picture. When Claude is the right tool to reach for, and when something else will serve you better. The goal is to build workflows where each tool does what it does best. Using Claude alongside other tools. Working on something most often requires multiple steps: research, thinking, drafting, refining. That's why some tasks often call for more than a single AI tool. The question is, which one fits a specific step? Scenario: choosing a health insurance plan. Let's say you need to pick a health insurance plan during open enrollment. Therefore, you need to understand what the different plans actually cover, figure out which matters for your situation, compare the real costs, and make sure you're not missing something important. Each step needs something different. You can use Google for a traditional search, or try ChatGPT's web search feature for quick summaries alongside sources. Either way works. What matters is gathering the information you need. You decide to go traditional and use Google to search for information about the plan options. This is what you find: comparison charts, coverage details, explanations of terms like deductible and out-of-pocket maximum. Within 15 minutes, you have the information, but it's dense and confusing. What do you need at this point? To understand what these differences actually mean for you. A recommendation on which plan to choose. More sources about insurance, and a summary of each plan's features. So bring everything to Claude by pasting the details of 3 different plans, and it will help you understand the differences.
Remember, that's amazing. Claude is built for this different kind of analysis, taking complex information and explaining what it means for a specific situation. You ask Cloud to explain the practical difference between three plans for a healthcare usage. Plan A has a lowest monthly premium and a highest deductible. You pay full price for visits until you hit 3,000 for 2 to 3 visits yearly. You'll likely never reach that. Plan B costs more monthly but covers visits after a $30 copay. And Plan C. Plan C is a middle option that has a complex coinsurance rule that make actual costs unpredictable. For your usage pattern, Plan B is likely cost less overall, despite the higher premium. You'll pay a predictable copay instead of a full visit cost.
Now you understand what these differences actually mean for your situation. That's synthesis that you learned. Claude took complex information and made it relevant to you. Checking your thinking. You're leaning toward Plan B, but you want to make sure you're not overlooking something. What if you end up needing more care than usual next year? You could continue with Claude, but you want a quick stress test of your reasoning from a different perspective. You open ChatGPT, describe the context, and ask, I'm choosing Plan B because I only see doctors 2 to 3 times yearly. What am I not considering? ChatGPT responds quickly. Consider unexpected health events, specialist visits that aren't primary care, prescription coverage differences, whether you're planning any major health changes, surgery, physical therapy, pregnancy, and whether you have dependents. Fast response, useful prompts. But these are general considerations, not an analysis of your specific situation. Next, you bring ChatGPT's list back to Claude, along with your plan details. But why bring ChatGPT's output to Claude instead of just asking ChatGPT to analyze further? Claude handles deeper reasoning about specific trade-offs when given full context. ChatGPT can't do a detailed analysis. Therefore, Claude gives more accurate information. ChatGPT has already finished its task.
Your specialist quarterly check-ins change the math significantly. From ChatGPT's list, the relevant factors are specialist visits, prescription coverage, what doesn't matter for your situation, and a revised analysis with 4 specialist visits yearly, quarterly. Plan B saves you approximately $800 to $1,000 per year compared to Plan A, even accounting for higher premium. The quarterly visits make Plan B even more clearly the right choice.
This is strategic thinking you practiced earlier. Claude evaluated which considerations actually matter for your specific situation. You have a confident decision now. Plan B. Communicating your decision. You need to email HR to confirm your enrollment and explain your choice for their records. You could write it yourself or draft it quickly with another tool. Gemini.
So you ask Gemini to write a brief email about the Plan B enrollment, including reviewing the options. So it says subject, health insurance enrollment confirmation. Dear name, I am writing to formally confirm my enrollment for Plan B in the upcoming benefit year. After careful consideration and thorough review of all the available options, I have determined that this plan most comprehensively aligns with your healthcare requirements and anticipated medical needs. Should you require any additional information or documentation to complete the enrollment process, Please do not hesitate to contact me at your earliest convenience. Thank you for your assistance. Best regards.
This draft has all the information, but reading it back, it sounds stiff and overly formal for your workplace culture. What do you need now? A complete rewrite or a second draft from a different tool? To add more detail about why you chose Plan B? Tone adjustment while keeping the information?
If you adjust the professional sound to conversational and not stiff, it keeps a brief structure. Hi, I'm confirming my enrollment in Plan B for the upcoming year. I've reviewed the options and it's best fit for my healthcare needs. Let me know if you need anything else from me to finalize the enrollment. Thanks. What changed? Removed the formal phrasing like blah 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 and blah 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 and kept the professionalism but made it sound like how people actually talk. Maintain the key information, enrollment confirmation and plan choice, and cut out the unnecessary blah 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 blah.
See? That's writing and editing in action. Claude refined what another tool drafted. Each tool played its role. This is how tools work together. Search tools, fast information gathering, ChatGPT, Gemini, quick generation and drafts. Claude. Deep understanding, strategic evaluation, careful refinement. So, the workflow is about knowing when to switch between them. You've learned when Claude adds the most value, when you need to understand, evaluate, or refine. The moments where careful thinking matters more than speed. Farewell. You've completed the Claude Guide. You understand how Claude thinks, when to use it, and how to combine it with other tools for better results. What you've learned here is just the foundation. The real skill comes from practice, using Claude for your actual work, discovering what works for your specific needs, and building workflows that fit how you think. Now go use it. You're ready.